and welcome to Network. My name is Mxolisi Masango, holding the fort for Siphumelele Zondi. Now you can be part of this technology conversation on our social media pages. It's SABC Network on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Let's take a look at what's coming up on the program. We get to see some of the winners of this year's Southern Africa Startup Awards. A discussion on transforming dilapidating African cities into smart cities was held at the Autodesk University event. We speak about the power of social media platforms have in driving political discourse with data scientist Kyle Finley. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. Seemingly, social media is playing a critical role in deciding what we talk about in our dinner tables, eh?
Yeah, it definitely is.
Well, we're looking forward to having a conversation with you, and that's all coming up in the program. The winners of the South African Startups Awards, which have been announced in a glittering ceremony in Johannesburg. Now, the awards celebrate the most forward-thinking, progressive and innovative tech companies in Africa.
Startup Grid Johannesburg honored Africa's finest innovators at the Southern Africa Startup Award ceremony that took place in Johannesburg. Matsi won the Best Social Impact Startup Award. Her company helps SMMEs develop disruptive business strategies.
If you are a startup, there's not a lot of money. Either you have to go to family, fools or friends. Some of us don't have family, fools or friends. So it's really a challenging environment, access to funding in South Africa. So we work closely with those who do have funding, the venture capitalists and the development funding institutions. And then lastly is about creating platforms that connect South Africans to information, to opportunities.
Golden Hlongwane won the People's Choice Award.
We actually distribute food ingredients into the retail space. Like what we do is we make spices in batch packs that our customers will use to make a final product. For example, if you go into a butcher shop at a Pick and Pay, you'll go on the boerewors and wors section. That is where we actually supply the flavor to make your boerewors, sausages, burgers, etc., etc.
The focus of these awards is to recognize startups and entrepreneurs who have shown outstanding achievement in business and service to the community.
Southern Africa Startup Award is an initiative that was created for a better ecosystem, to build a sustainable ecosystem through entrepreneurship. Southern Africa Startup Award is about an initiative where we try to celebrate, honor, and connect startup within the Southern Africa perspective.
The winners will represent South Africa at the regional grand finale of the Southern Africa Startup Awards, which will take place on the 21st and the 22nd November in Johannesburg.
Now, software company Autodesk hosted their annual conference, Autodesk University Africa. Now, this was an event for design, architectural and engineering professionals here in Johannesburg. Now, this is where discussions on transforming African cities into smart ones took center stage.
The infrastructure of many of Africa's major cities is dilapidating and has to be upgraded. Many haven't been given the right kind of technology to turn them into smart cities. Doing this is critical in the 21st century.
How do you identify where cables are, where sewage lines are? How do you take that and model that back in and build a virtual city that you can then start looking at your smart cities projects?
This was one of the discussions at the Autodesk University Summit held in Johannesburg. The summit has taken place in other parts of the world.
Bringing it to South Africa is very important for us because this is our launch pad into Africa.
Some came to showcase what they do, which they say can also help African cities fast-track themselves and become smart cities. Virtual reality was popular here.
Let's say you're an architect and you're building a new shopping mall for a customer. What you can do in virtual reality is actually give your customer a complete walkthrough of their completed shopping mall before you've even started laying the foundation. It gives you shorter lead time to market. It lets you make changes before you've started laying down the foundation, and ultimately you're going to save yourself and your customer money in doing so.
Such cities will have to use machines, which makes people worry. But some say jobs won't be lost.
You still need employees to run the machines, and it's allowing manufacturing to be done locally. So without this technology, we won't be competitive in the global market. This allows South African companies now to be competitive with what's happening in the East. And if we don't get on board with this technology and automation, we will be left behind.
While cities have always had people designing them, what came out here is that architects, town planners and engineers will have to use new tech to reimagine them today so they can create new smart cities.
Now, new technologies from out virtual reality are beginning to disrupt existing models of learning. This week, former heads of states, policymakers and tech entrepreneurs met in Johannesburg to share experiences and discuss the role technology can play to transform education in Africa.
Disruptive technologies permeate our lives in almost every way. Education is no exception. From the way teachers teach to the devices used by learners in the classroom, technology is transforming education.
Technology's got a huge role to play in how we capacitate people going forward in the future. Africa has always lagged behind quite a lot in how well educated our people are. And if we're ever going to have a meaningful way to solve that problem, technology is going to be a key part, because whatever solution you come up with has to be able to scale. We already know how to educate a small number of people, 30 or 40 or 50, but how do we reach millions or billions of people? And the better we understand how we can leverage technology tools to educate people, the more effective those results are going to be.
Some of these technologies were discussed at the Fundi conference held in Johannesburg. Speakers here say educators need to continue to learn and keep up with the latest technologies available to them.
It is a must for the teachers to be very resourced and very, very much aware of the system and the impacts and the vision of our education, let's say the history of our education.
Teachers need to be able to support their learners using the technology. The reality is that their learners themselves are going to be the digital natives who are going to, in my mind, pick up the technology a lot quicker and easier. So we shouldn't constrain the learners as well at the same time to that teacher's knowledge.
In the exhibition space, young developers showcase their latest innovations on offer.
We made a robot called Bongani. We named it Bongani. It does many things. It distributes papers in classes. You can take it at home and program it to do many things.
This robot does, what it does is when it moves around and it sees that object, it turns and goes the opposite direction where there's no object.
Some say forward-thinking teachers can use technology to promote teamwork and collaborative projects.
We've seen the collaboration between ourselves and teachers as the most important ever. I mean, we can collaborate with a lot of corporates, but that means nothing to the end user. And the end user in this case is the learner. And the person facilitating the lesson and giving forth the knowledge is the teacher. So from the first day we implemented our robotic solution, we chose to go in and do teacher training.
The conference provided long-term disruptive solutions that are expected to be impactful and improve lives through education.
Now, after the break, we speak about the possible political interference on South African Twitter with Kyle F., who's a data researcher. Remember to have your say on our social media handle, that's SABC Network. Up next.
This is a space for every woman in South Africa.
I want to speak to the women who cannot walk a kilometer in this country without looking over their shoulders, without being groped or harassed.
I was not born like this. In 2011, I got stabbed by a boyfriend.
How many centimeters? How many centimeters long is the political will to end the scourge of violence against women, against children,
I was locked up in the room for 2 weeks.
There are measures, there are laws, there are policies. But these policies and measures and laws do not speak to these lived realities.
We must fight the culture of gender-based violence.
This is where young men must be taught that women are not their footballs. This is where young men must be taught to respect women.
We pride ourselves on being impartial as well as independent. On the agenda, we basically break down the stories of the day.
Give the viewer the assurance that we will cover every side of the story.
Tear gas has now been also thrown at the protesters.
We are peacefully marching and the police is stopping the people. They're hitting the people. We are spraying the people with pepper spray. These people are supposed to protect us, but they are against us.
We are pushing them back by using the rubber bullets because we cannot allow them to block the roads and damage other people's property.
Quite important to bring on board all sides and hear what everybody has to say about a story, especially being the public broadcaster.
All in all, we basically take the news agenda of the day forward.
Welcome back. Father of the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee, said that he was disappointed with the current state of the internet. Now, this is following scandals over the abuse of personal data and the use of social media to spread hate. Let's take a look.
When did Facebook learn that Cambridge Analytica's research project was actually for targeted psychographic political campaign work?
The Cambridge Analytica debacle, I think, for a lot of people was a tipping point when they realized that the web isn't just a place where more and more truth will out, but in fact lots and lots of fake stuff will out. And it's not just outing, but it's not just bubbling to the surface, it's being very carefully nurtured by malevolent forces manipulating people on social media. So I think that's, there was a global disenchantment at that point.
Joining us from our Cape Town studios to talk about his findings on the influence social media has on political discourses, Kyle Finley, who is a data researcher. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us on Network. Now, at the back of that insert, you've just heard the inventor of the internet come out to say that he's very concerned. Are his concerns warranted?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the modern battlefield is the battlefield of the mind, and the tools for affecting the mind are social media.
Let's talk about your study. You've studied the South Africa for about 6 years plus. And what were some of your findings regarding the country's, politics and public opinion?
Well, I don't think we're seeing the level of interference that you hear on American media around Russian interference, Iranian interference, things like that. But based on my research, we do have interference occurring in our own public discourse on social media. We're all aware of, well, many of us are aware of the Gupta bots and how several hundred fake accounts were able to popularize until then relatively obscure Communist Party phrase of white monopoly capital. They did a great job of injecting that into our national discourse. But in addition to that, what I'd done on my most recent research was I'd looked back over discussions that had been had on Twitter in the past 4 years covering things like student protests, all the fees must fall, roads must fall, the ANC 54 elections, Helen Zille's legacy of colonialism tweet, a variety of things covering politics and social issues that have been discussed on Twitter over the last several years. And I looked at how many users in each of those discussions had been subsequently suspended by Twitter. Because what's happened recently is Twitter's increased their policing of the platform. They've stepped up their game when it comes to identifying fake accounts, malicious actors, and general trolls spreading hate and vitriol. And so I looked for how many of those kinds of users had been suspended from each discussion by Twitter. And when I did that, I found that there's a fair amount of interference in the sense that some of those data sets would have several thousand users that had been suspended by Twitter. And when you looked at what those users were saying, you saw a variety of things happening. You saw things like someone would say something and then 50 accounts from America would retweet it within 5 seconds of each other, which is indicative of automated bot behavior. And then you find other scenarios where very divisive content was being retweeted, and those people were being subsequently suspended, implying that Twitter thought that there was something not quite right with those accounts. And when you look at the kinds of content that those suspended accounts were retweeting, you get an idea of what the potential agendas might be. We can't say who's behind them for sure. We can just make some hypotheses and inferences based on who Twitter's identifying as bad actors and kicking off the platform. And the three broad kinds of content that these suspended users seem to be amplifying and boosting in our local discourse were around radical economic transformation, the far right in terms of things like white genocide and issues relating to white fear, farm land expropriation, that kind of thing, farm killings, and then content specific around the EFF and pro-EFF. So that's not to say that those groups are the ones doing it, but accounts and people sympathetic to those topics are clearly being identified by Twitter and being kicked off the system.
All right. So now, it's hard for us to have this conversation without bringing in, Bell Pottinger and that scandal that happened. Would you say that, that scandal itself would have been a classic case of how such underhand tactics can go horribly wrong?
Yeah, well, we have to separate out what happened with Bell Pottinger. Bell Pottinger got into a room with, various politicians from the previous dispensation, whatever you want to refer to it as, and hammered out a PR strategy, a way of positioning themselves, a way of putting forward messages, articulating them in a certain way. That is quite separate to the activation of that on social media. We know that they activated on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google ads, for example. But that was not necessarily done by Bell Pottinger directly, but the content strategy was informed by Bell Pottinger. So that was a very effective campaign and is to some extent representative of how these things happen. The difference there, though, was that there are different kinds of ways in which you can influence social media. And what they did was they focused on what are called sock puppets. So all evidence seems to indicate is that they had a social media digital team working out of India to a content plan, working with a schedule to put out content that pushed a specific message. That costs money, it requires a lot of coordination, but there are other ways of doing it as well. And the easiest way of doing it is to just go onto the black market, and for a few dollars you can buy some fake accounts from someone in the Middle East, in Russia, wherever you want to go. They're all over the place, in the Philippines. You can buy some fake accounts, and all you do is you tweet something, and you point those fake accounts at your tweet, and they will automatically retweet it and give your post 50 retweets.
All right, Kyle,
and what that does is it gives your post social capital.
We have to let you go there, and of course that's Kyle Finley, who is a research analyst. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your time, Kyle, indeed. Now, we caught up with actress Nolthando Meje, and she told us about her favorite piece of technology. Take a look.
My favorite gadget is smartphone yami. It's because it helps me capture memories by taking pictures and also just keep updated what's going on.
Somali hosts its first ever technology summit and talks on women participation in ICT fields. Now, this all takes center stage. Now, Google employees stage brief walkout in protest sexual harassment and other issues in the company. These are some of the stories that made tech headlines in the last week.
In a conference center in the Somali capital Mogadishu, a group of young women are being taught to code. This is Mogadishu's inaugural tech summit, and one of the focuses has been advancing women and girls in the field of ICT.
In Somalia, Somali women do not have the opportunity to join the technology sector, and we want to create an opportunity to overcome the challenges they face in the sector and create skills to catch up with technology markets.
The Mogadishu Tech Summit, attended by various government officials and featuring an exhibition and a pitching session, was organized by tech incubator iRise Hub. And off we go to the US of A. Hundreds of Google employees and contractors in New York and Washington, D.C. staged a brief midday walkout on Thursday, with more expected to follow at offices worldwide, amid complaints of sexism, racism, and unchecked executive power in their workplace.
Support women and to protest the way that this company has handled sexual harassment cases.
Protesting the handling of sexual harassment cases by upper management.
Google Chief Executive Sundar Pichai said in a statement that employees have raised constructive ideas and that the company was taking all their feedback so that they can turn these ideas into actions. The workers who filed out its New York headquarters shortly after 11 a.m. local time were hoping for real change and to be treated equally. And off we go to Switzerland. 2 years ago would have been unimaginable for the 47-year-old who was paralyzed from the waist down after a bicycle accident 5 years ago. But thanks to a spinal implant developed by Swiss-based scientists, he's able to take tentative steps towards rehabilitation.
Sebastian basically had no ability to activate single muscles of both legs, what we say like a motor complete paraplegia. And now with some training, he's able to really trigger, like for example, a full leg extension of his leg. So you see he is doing a flexion of the left leg. He's able to extend completely his left leg against the direction of gravity and maintains the extension. So he basically recovers a lot of control over the paralyzed muscles, despite more than 4 years of complete paralysis.
The spinal implant is a 3-inch long flexible piece of silicon with electrodes embedded. But it is old technology normally used to alleviate neuropathic pain that the Swiss team have adapted for their research. Bloch said that the next step is to develop tailored neurotechnology.
A smart condom that detects STIs will be showcased at this year's International Consumer Electronics Expo here in Johannesburg. And we asked if you think that such a condom is necessary or technology has just gone too far this time. Now, 60% of the respondents say no, we definitely need it. Now, that figure is in the majority. 40% of you are not bothered by this. Nobody said yes, and this is unnecessary. Now, that figure remains at 0%. That's it from us this week. Remember to follow us on our social media platforms. It's SABC Network on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Spumelele will be back with you next week once again. So do tune in, same time, same place. Now, Volvo has teamed up with Chinese car makers Baidu to head to head with Google's self-driving cars. From me, Mkolisi Masango, and the rest of the team, we wish you a spectacular one going forward. Take care.
To be a part of something like this makes me proud. And I think that to be able to report the news in a fair, just, independent and impartial way is what the public broadcaster stands for.
It's a new month and a new chance at becoming Mzansi's latest jackpot winner. Could it be you? What would you do with this amazing jackpot? Get ready, here are the winning lottery.